This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so as I said last week, we discussed heaven. This week we will discuss hell. Okay, and see what is a true Jewish Torah approach to understanding this. I mentioned, many things are said like, well, I'm Jewish, so of course, and then a person can propose a very non-Jewish or non-Torah based approach, and representing that as well. Of course, that's the Jewish belief, and of course, we like to go to sources and understand what it really is. So there's much talk of hell in the world. I like a story I'll share with you. Person writes, I was walking across a bridge one day. A man was standing at the edge, about to jump off. I ran over and said, stop, don't do it. Why shouldn't I? Well, there's so much to live for, I said. Like what? Well, are you religious or atheist? Religious. Me too. Are you Christian or Jewish? Christian. Me too. Are you Catholic or Protestant? Protestant. Me too. Are you Episcopalian or Baptist? The guy says, I'm Baptist. Wow, me too. Are you Baptist Church of God or Baptist Church of the Lord? I'm Baptist Church of God. Me too. Are you Original Baptist Church of God or are you Reformed Baptist Church of God? I'm Reformed Baptist Church of God. Me too. Are you Reformed Baptist Church of God, Reformation 1879? Or Reformed Baptist Church of God, Reformation 1915? I'm Reformation 1915. Die, heretic. And he pushes them off the bridge. Okay. So we can become so convinced that our way is the only way. And whereas Judaism understands that God is the God of the universe, which certainly includes humanity, certainly includes all of humanity. And that is why the Torah has the 613 mitzvot, called them pathways to God, for those who are Jewish, either born Jewish or convert and become Jewish. And the Torah has the Sheva mitzvot b'nei Noach, the 7 Noahide mitzvot, for those who are not Jewish, affording them to connect to God and to have that eternal connection with God. So there are many of these interfaith groups, but many of the major religions have a big problem with one another, right? And that problem is hell, right? It's not brought up at the interfaith meetings, but the official Catholic policy, I believe, is that Protestants, Muslims, and Jews go to hell. Protestants say that Catholics, Muslims, and Jews go to hell. And Muslims say that Christians and Jews go to hell, right? However, the Jewish viewpoint, as I alluded to before, is God is the God of all humanity. And therefore, there's not only one way to connect to God. And also, Jews don't believe, Judaism does not believe in hell as an everlasting damnation and torture, right? The eternal damnation, right? The eternal aspect does not apply. And our understanding of what is going on in hell is very, very different. So let's begin with source number one, Rav Aryeh Kaplan, right? From his classic book, If You Were God. Imagine standing, oh, I'm sorry, let me share with you.
What about those real evil people? Is there any punishment for them?
You don't want them to get away with it, do you? Huh? I wouldn't put him in that category. I wouldn't put him in that category. Let me get a better writing there for Kathy. View page width. And then let me get rid of this. Full screen mode. Okay. So
Thank you.
you're very welcome. Okay, good. Kathy, you're there, right?
Yes, thank you.
Good.
I can see it.
Okay, good. I can't see you, so you'll have to speak up if you want to interject. Okay, so just as an aside, so Allah brought up, how about the really bad people? I'm talking about like the Hitlers, okay? I wouldn't put Dr. Fauci in that category. Whether we agree with the vaccine or not, he meant well, right? Yeah. Whatever. I'm not going there. Okay. So it's interesting. I didn't hear directly. I heard from a close friend of mine who heard directly from Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg, Zatzal, the Rosh Yeshiva of Nei Yisroel, the brother of Rav Noach Weinberg, of blessed memory, from Eish HaTorah. So he said along the lines that as much as we like to think that, oh, they should be burning forever, right? But the fact is, if someone is existing, they're having a certain degree of connection to God. And the worst thing imaginable is not to exist, right? Even though, right, we feel no, don't let them get away with it. You gotta, have them burning in piles of dung for all eternity, right? But whatever. Okay. Rabbi Kaplan writes, imagine standing completely visible before God, with your memory wide open, completely transparent, without any jamming mechanism or reducing valve to diminish its force. You will remember everything you did and see it in a new light. You will see it in the light of the unshaded spirit, or if you will, in God's own light that shines from one end of creation to the other. The memory of every good deed and mitzvah will be the sublimest of pleasures, as our tradition speaks of Olam Haba, the world to come. But your memory will also be open to all the things of which you are ashamed. They cannot be rationalized away or dismissed. You will be facing yourself fully aware of the consequences of all your deeds. And that's very important, right? Right now, we do something wrong. We have no idea what the consequences are. But there are consequences, which we don't necessarily see. But maybe this pain that we underwent, or that someone dear to us underwent, or this situation was actually caused by us. Right? The Gemara in Sanhedrin takes a number of common expressions and says and shows how they are rooted in the Torah. And one of the expressions is along the lines that we create our own problems and then we blame God. And the example from the Torah is the brothers of Joseph, of Yosef, when this crazy viceroy of Egypt is giving them all these problems. So what do they say? Why is God doing this to us? When actually, of course, this was Yosef, and this was what they created by selling him away. So there are consequences, and you'll be facing yourself fully aware of the consequences of all your deeds. Wow. We all know the terrible shame and humiliation experienced when one is caught in the act of doing something wrong. Imagine being caught by one's own memory in the presence of God with no place to escape. Wow. So we're not talking about fires burning. We're talking about confronting ourselves with all the things that we've done, the wonderful things, but also the less wonderful things. Now, it's important to keep in mind, we mentioned before about the eternal aspect. So there is no eternal punishment. Justice means there needs to be a balancing out. We are finite, our sins are finite, and therefore this corrective process, cleansing process, coming to terms honestly with all the things that we've done, that also needs to be finite. A mitzvah, as we mentioned before, is how we touch the infinite. We connect to God, who is infinite. Therefore, a mitzvah is going to be infinite and eternal. But the connection, when we do something wrong, that is a temporary separation of us from God. Evil, bad, will not exist forever. And therefore, the atonement period, the correction period, is of a set period of time. As Ramchal in Derech Hashem, yes, Cheryl.
Is that the 11 months?
We'll come to that. Yes, that's the idea of the 12 months and therefore 11 months. We'll come to that.
Did you also say that something so completely evil? It sounded almost as if they get extinguished.
That's what it seems.
What does it mean, get extinguished?
Cease to exist.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
If a person has consciousness, he doesn't have to wait for hell to feel shame and guilt and burning sensations like that. But if a person doesn't have consciousness, no matter, everybody believes that there's, most probably everybody believes that there is some kind of answer to God for all your deeds. If a person didn't have consciousness here, why do you think he will suddenly start burning with self-remorse in front of the God? He will not. He doesn't have consciousness, period.
When you say consciousness, do you mean the person is unconscious or conscience?
Realization that you do something wrong.
Okay. So, yes. Okay, so a person who regrets, who confronts and regrets, we call that teshuvah. And that is a way, I'm with you, and that is a way of cleansing. A person who does not, so why do I not? Because I think to myself, not such a big deal. I don't know if God really cares. I don't really care, right? But then at a certain point, when that one is confronted with the stark reality of God's presence and your actions and and the actions and that which it has led to, then a person can be stealing and without a worry in the world until they're caught.
Even if after they're caught, they don't feel guilty that they did that. They feel sorry that they were caught.
Okay, because they don't understand the magnitude of the opportunity that they had, right? Right? They don't understand the magnitude of the opportunity that they had and how they not only squandered that, but used it against themselves. Once that is perfectly clear, so then we have this is what results. This is a time when all of our rationalizations, as we said, all that we do to say, it's fine, I don't care, right? All that gets stripped away and we confront the reality. Yes, Miri.
My question is, if you did something wrong and then you feel bad about it, does it absolve you from the wrongdoing?
Yeah. So one of the gifts that we have is called teshuvah, and teshuvah is that if I'm teshuvah is 3 parts to it. I regret having done it, I admit to having done it, and I resolve not to continue to do that. Those are the three components to tshuva, as I always say. And if someone did something, if someone hurt me, right, and any one of those three are missing, it doesn't work. They feel bad, they apologize. Are they going to do it again? No, no, no. Right? They apologize, they won't do it again. They don't feel bad. No. Right? They feel bad, right? They won't do it again, but they don't apologize. Also, not enough. So those three components, and the understanding, certainly in the context of what we're learning over here, is that if I subject myself to that shame, that remorse, so then I haven't needed to wait for God to confront me. I've confronted myself. Then that which then the shame, the pain, the angst that I felt, that is my corrective process. It doesn't need to be, it's self-imposed as opposed to externally subjecting me to that.
So that takes care of the person who did the wrong deed, right? What happens to the other people, person?
Okay, so we'll come to that also. But there's bein adam lamakom and bein adam lachavero. There's things between us and God, and things between us and someone else. Between us and God, that's all we need to do. Between us and someone else, if I've harmed them physically, if I've harmed them monetarily, I need to make them whole. I need to get their forgiveness. As we said a number of times, you see these crazy people. We forgive, right? Talking about some murderer that we forgive you. Who are they? Even God cannot forgive unless the person who's harmed is forgiven. And therefore, if we've hurt somebody, we need to ask them their forgiveness. That's step A, and only then can we move forward and sort things out with God. Yeah. Let's see this Ramchal. Ramchal, source number 2, Derech Hashem. In his kindness, God maximized man's chances of successfully attaining his ultimate goal, right? Until then, he was just talking about the ultimate goal is to get to Olam Haba. Well, the ultimate goal is to connect to God, right? And that place of the full connection is in Olam Haba, the world to come. We'll soon hear later today another definition of Olam Haba. Right? But God wanted to maximize humankind's chances of successfully attaining this ultimate goal. He therefore decreed that there should be a secondary way to attach oneself to God for those for whom such attachment is fitting, namely those who were overcome by evil, but not to such an extent that they should lose existence entirely, as we mentioned before. These people therefore experience the punishment of Gehenna, the purpose of which is to recompense the person according to his transgression in a way that the person will be left with no debt, so to speak, to pay for one's misdeeds. One will then be able to achieve one's ultimate reward in accordance with the good acts that one performed. By virtue of this system, the actual number of those who are lost completely is minimized. Such a severe consequence only applies to those who have so completely been taken over by evil that it will be impossible for them to experience the true reward and eternal delight. And that is, Cheryl, you mentioned that before, the idea, the concept that we have that this process, this Gehenom process, lasts for a maximum of 12 months after a person has passed away. And therefore we say Kaddish for 11 months. Why? Right. We don't want to assume that they were of the ilk that would require the max, right? The full 12 months. Okay. Saying the Kaddish, right, atones for that person, that there is Kedusha being generated, holiness being generated in this world because of them. So that helps to mitigate what they go through there. And the suffering is not fire and pitchforks and brimstones, but it is, as we saw before, the embarrassment, or some put it as the distance between you and God. And
I wish them to burn in hellfire.
okay, right? It is the distance, and that is the most painful thing that a person can feel. I mentioned before, someone to say that my father or my mother, Le'em Shalom, are on the other side of that wall, and I can't get through to them, right? That would be torturous. And here we have our true parent. We have Hashem there, and fully recognizing that and having this chatzitza, this separation, this distance. That is the Gehenom that we're talking about, not the fire brimstone, but it is the embarrassment, the awareness, and the distance that ended up causing. Yes, Leah.
So this goes for all the religions, both the Muslims, the Christians, and whoever, even though they were not brought up with the same, you know, state of mind, education, belief.
So every human being has his or her means of connection to God, right? We Jews have our Tariag, 613 mitzvot. Non-Jews have their 7 mitzvot. And this will apply for them also. The connection that they will have will be based upon their having committed themselves and to observing these mitzvot of theirs. Yeah, yeah. No, if you're asking, is this what Christianity or Islam believes? I don't think it is at all, right? But if I can't speak on behalf of others. But how do we? This is our view for humankind. Yeah. The Mishnah. Just 1 second. Sorry about that, Kathy. There we go. Right. The Gemara gives an interesting example of someone who will need this spiritual cleansing of Gehenna. The Gemara says in Kiddushin, Tov sheberofim legehenna. The best of the doctors are going to hell. Now, 1 second. Right? It doesn't mention lawyers, it mentions doctors. Right? Maimonides. Right? And which Jewish mother doesn't want her son to be a doctor? Right? And doctors are amazing. They save lives. We have some incredible members of our community, doctors who do an amazing job helping people. Right? So what does this mean? The Maharsha explains that is shemakazik atzmo l'tov l'mumcha sheberofim. Someone not who is the best of the doctors, who holds of him or herself as being the best of the doctors, the most expert. She'ein kamohu, no one like him. V'somech b'yoter hamchato, and he relies. No one else is as insightful. No one else is as skilled a practitioner, in diagnosing as I am. He relies too much on his own intelligence, and in his arrogance, sometimes makes an incorrect diagnosis and ends up killing the patient by prescribing something that was actually harmful for him. He should have consulted with the doctors since he is dealing with matters of life and death. So such a person, because of his or her haughtiness, has caused pain or has been the instrument through which much pain has come to the world. Actually, they point out the numerical value for Tov, Tet, Vav, Bet. So Tet is 9, Vav is 6, Beis is 2. That gives us a grand tally of 17. They say, oh, Tov Sheberofim, right? He only says 17 of the 18 blessings of the Amidah. What does he leave out? Rifa'enu, the blessing of healing. Rifa'enu. Dr. Ciner is here. Who needs Rifa'enu? Right? He doesn't actually do that, but that's his attitude. Right? He is God's gift to this world. Right? The Tov Sheberofim, to someone who holds themselves to be in such high esteem. Right? and that haughtiness causes him to be an instrument of pain to others. So that is who this is right? So that's an example of that the Gemara gives for this Gehenna. The Gemara tells us a fascinating story. You have it in English. I'll read in Hebrew and translate it into English as we go through it. And this gives us a sense of who are those that are destined for Olam Haba, for the world to come. The Gemara relates, Rabbi Brocha Chuzah Habishchiach B'shuko Devei Lafat. Rabbi Brocha Chuzah's name was often in the marketplace of Lafat. Habishchiach Eliyahu Gabei. And he was a person who Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu Navi, would often visit with him, be with him. Amalei, so he's there in the marketplace. Eliyahu Navi is there with him. He figured, wow, what an opportunity. Amalei, so he said to Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, Ika Bahai Shuka Bar Alma Da'ati. Is there someone in this marketplace who is destined for the world to come? Eliyahu looked around. Amalei, he said, no, I don't see anybody right now. After a little while, Chazul Ho Gavra, he saw a certain person. Davi Sayin Mesane Ukmi. First of all, this guy was wearing black shoes. And contrary to what happens today, Jews would not be wearing black shoes. Right? So he's wearing shoes that almost identifies him as a non-Jew. And he also did not have the tzitzit strings on his garment. Amarle, Eliyahu said to Rav Brocha, Hi bar alma da'atehu. That man is going to heaven. He's the alma da'ati guy. Rod Patre, Rav Brocha was fascinated. He ran after this fellow. Amarle mayuvdech. What do you do? Tell me about yourself. Amarle, this person said, Zeal, please, go away. Ha'idna, go away now. Vital lamachar. Come tomorrow. I can talk to you tomorrow. I can't talk to you today. Lamachar. They met up the next day. Amalei, Rav Brocha repeated his question. Ma uvdech. What do you do? Tell me about yourself. Amalei zan dukna ana. I work in the prisons. I'm a warden. Vasrana. And when I have to incarcerate people, I'm very careful. Asrana gabri luchud, v'nashi luchud. I have the men in one area and the women in a different area to make sure that no one is going to be vulnerable, no one is going to be violated. V'ramina purai bein hani lahani. And not only that, but I place a separation between so they will not come to do anything that is prohibited. And ki chazina bat Yisroel, when I see a Jewish girl in the prison, diavi nachem ala einahu, that I see that the other inmates, the male inmates, the idolater inmates, are casting their eyes upon her. Masrana nafshai, I go to great lengths, umatzil nala, and I help her, I rescue her. Yom echad, one time, habinara mu'urasa gavan. There was a girl who was a betrothed girl, first stage of marriage, which means she was not yet with her husband. First stage of marriage makes her fully a married woman, but they would still live in their separate domiciles until the second stage of marriage, the nisuin. Nowadays, of course, on marriages, we do both kiddushin and nisuin back to back. In the time of the Talmud, it was a year apart. And the Nachum there cast their eyes upon her. What did I do? Shakli durdaya dechamra. I took some of the sediment of wine. Veshadila bishipula. and I threw it onto her garment. And that way I made it look as if she was having her period. But Amri Distanahi. And, oh, she's having a period. They weren't interested anymore. Amalei, Rabroka said to my timer, late lachute. Why don't you have strings? Tzitzit. Viramit misani ukmi. And why are you wearing these black shoes? Amalei ayilna unapikna beini necharim. I am working, I'm in and out amongst the Gentiles. Ki lo leidu diudana. And that way they don't know that I am Jewish. Ki avi gazri gazrata. And therefore they speak openly in front of me. And when they're devising a plan against the Jewish community, modan l'hula rabbanan, I quickly let the rabbis, the leaders, know what is in the works. Ubo rachame, and they pray, they do what needs to be done. Umevatli l'gzeiratayu, and the decree doesn't reach fruition. My time, what's the reason? When I asked you, what do? You told me, go now, come tomorrow. Amalei, he said, I'll tell you why. At that time, right? There was a decree in the works. And I said the first thing I need to do, priority, without doing anything else, is to go to the rabbis and let them deal with this. While all this is going on, atu hanach trei. Two other people came along. Eliyahu leaned over and said, Hanach nami b'nei alma da'ati ninhu. Right? Eliyahu said, these people are also b'nei olam haba. Rav Broka finished interviewing the first one. Now he went to these two individuals. What do you do? We are jesters. We are jokesters. Mebadchinan atzivi. Right? We see someone who is sad, and what do? We cheer that person up. Inami, alternatively, another version of this story, Ki chazinan beitrei di'itluhu tigra badayu. If we see two people who are having some sort of a dispute between them, tarchinan vavdinan luhu shlama. We work and we help them sort it out, that there should be peace between them. So these are the people that Eliyahu Navi pointed out as being B'nai Olam Haba, those who were destined to be in the world to come. Interesting. These were Bein Adam L'Chaveiro situations between man and man, right? Not that negates, but we always point out there were 10 commandments, Aseret Adibrot, on 2 equal size stones, right? 5 of them are Bein Adam L'Makom, between us and God. 5 of them are Bein Adam L'Chaveiro, between mankind and mankind, between us, and each of those are essential components. Yeah. So actually, it's not reward or punishment. It's what we create. And I've shared before, I'll do it a faster, a little shorter version, but a beautiful parable that I heard of 2 guys in their late 20s, right? Both very successful, married, cute little kids, very successful in the financial world. And they're both caught for doing some inside trading, whatever it was. And the judge comes down hard on them, and they're each sentenced to 25 years in prison. The first one goes to prison and says, all right, my gosh, I'm not going to get out of here till I'll be in my 50s. Huh. My life's over at that point already. 50s, right? You can imagine that, 50s, right? Right? So he says, I've got to do whatever I can do to make sure that my life here is good. So what does he do? He gets very friendly with the different guards, and he right? And friendly with other prisoners. They respect him. The guards respect him. And he slowly climbs the ranks of a prisoner, meaning he gets his own cell, he gets his own TV, he gets cable piped in, right? And whenever there's any problem between the prisoners and the warden, he's the one who works it out. The prisoner, the guards, the warden hears about it. There's a congressional committee coming in to investigate the state of our country's prisons. They come to that prison, the warden has them meet with him, and he's wonderful, right? Meanwhile, back at the ranch, he's got a wife, right? He's got kids. They're growing up. So he sends them a very perfunctory happy birthday, happy new year, this, that, this, that. The kids are going through grade school. They're going through high school. They're off to college. They're dating seriously. They're getting married. They're having their own kids, and he's sending his happy new year cards, happy birthday cards. 25 years go by, and he's about to be released. What happens? Who's there waiting for him? Well, at the prison, they make a big party for him, right? He's been such a wonderful asset to the whole system. Who's waiting for him outside the prison gates? Virtually no one. The second guy has a very different attitude. I might have to be here, but this is not who I am. This is not what I'm about. This is not what defines me. So he's a good prisoner. He does what he needs to do, doesn't make any waves, doesn't make any problems, but he's writing meaningful letters to his wife for what he's going through. As the kid's getting old, he's writing letters that his wife should read to the kids. Then he starts writing letters to the kids in not cursive, in block letters, they could read it. Then in cursive. They're going through high school. They're dealing with all the things that kids deal with in high school, with social and relationships, drugs, you name it. Things that kids deal with. And they confer with him. He's writing meaningful letters to his wife. They are working together to raise these kids as this pair as much as they can. And then they're off to college, and then they're dating, and then they're seeing people seriously, then they're getting married, and he forges a relationship also with the spouses of his kids. And then they have children, and he's writing letters to them from their grandfather, and he's reading it to them, and then they're writing to them. 25 years go by. He's not so celebrated when he leaves the prison. When he leaves the gates of the prison, his wife, his children, children-in-law, grandchildren are all there to greet him. Now, we would not say the second guy got rewarded and the first guy got punished. It's not reward and punishment. It's what have you built? What have you created? What have you invested of yourself into? And then that's what you have. I like to quote from the Beatles, the end of the Abbey Road medley. And in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. That's what it is, right? What are you creating? What have you formed in your life? So the Olam Haba is not this, either you get a lollipop or you're going to get a slap on the wrist. No, you have what you create. You are creating that. And the Meiri says, Ein Olam Haba, source number 6, Schar HaMa'asim. Olam Haba, the world to come, is not the reward, the lollipop for one's actions. Aval hu parim. It is the fruit. Ratzalomar, Yotze Mehem Ketsei Tapri Min Ha'etz. Right? The apple tree, what does it produce? Apples. Sorry? Hopefully. Right? It produces what it produces. That's Olam Haba. What have we produced? What have we created? What have we made? It's a famous story of, number 7, right? As I mentioned before, Olam Haba, the world to come. So in his Gateway to Judaism, excellent book, He writes as follows: the condition of the soul's existence in Olam Haba, its degree of closeness and connection to God, or otherwise, is directly determined by its previous activities in the physical world. It is not the world to come. It is the world that comes. The world to come sounds like, oh, it's going to be later on, right? But doesn't fully connect it to our life, our world over here. It's the world that comes. He writes so beautifully, the state that results directly from what happens in this world. I'd be a little stronger. From what we do in this world. What happens sounds a little bit too happenstance. What happens in this world? No. It comes directly as a result of what we do, the choices we make, the relationships with others, with God, the way we act. Famously, number 8, it is told that the students of the Vilna Gaon, in the last hours of his life, gathered around his bed, eager to hear their great master's last words. They expected to see him joyous at the prospect of his reward in the world to come, but were surprised to see him with tears on his face. He held up his tzitzit and said, "How beautiful this world is. For just a few coins, one can buy threads, tie tzitzit, and so come close to the Shekhinah, to the divine presence. But in the world to come, it is impossible to do any of this." That is, we had the mashal, the parable that we had in our Chovas Halvava, Studies of the Heart class, not this past one, 2 times ago. This world is, there are diamonds all around. Diamonds on the street, opportunities to do good, to help people. A simple, kind word can make such a difference. You're checking out a wholesome choice. Have a kind word for the person there, the person in front of you, the person behind you, the person behind the checkout counter. Wish them a good day. I mean, it's nonstop opportunities that we have, but that's only in this world. Yes, Janet.
So, what you've built, the Nishmot, maybe they've been in several bodies. So, is there what you've built that took precedence?
I don't think so. Look,
Or is it additive? Or
we'll deal with Gilgal next week. Next week is Gilgal, reincarnation. But the idea of Gilgal in broad strokes is unfinished business. So therefore, it would be cumulative in that respect, right? It's unfinished business that one needs to take care of. So it certainly would be cumulative. It's all you, right? We think this me and then, right? But it's all however we can wrap our heads around that. Yes.
What are the stages of the soul when a person dies?
The soul leaves the body. The soul goes before God, before the kingdom in heaven. There is a judgment of what will be, and the person is then in the Olam HaNeshamot, in the world of souls. Ultimately, that soul will be returned during the time of the resurrection and will receive its ultimate reward back down over here. During that time in the world of souls, our understanding is those who have earned it will delight in the presence of God. Those who need will go through what we discussed earlier today, right? That correction, that confronting of who one of the things that one did, the choices one made, right? And then have a connection with God. And the body decomposes in the grave until the time where it can be rebuilt in a soul-like level, and that'll be the time of the resurrection. That's in broad strokes. Yes, Dove.
This world might be Gehenna.
A person can turn this world into Gehenna.
For sure.
A person can, right? I always say that we decide the world that we're living in. There's so much beauty and so much pain all around us, and we can decide it's a beautiful world by focusing on the beauty, or we could say it's a disgusting, dirty, terrible, cruel, ruthless, harsh world by focusing on that. And there are elements of both, and we have to decide which world we're going to choose to live in. That's the idea of an ayin tov.
Okay. A child is born, and you see traits in him of your father or your grandfather. So the soul is not a stranger's soul gets into the body of the baby.
It's not a stranger soul. God is the wonderful matchmaker and decides which
But
souls.
you see traits in baby.
Yeah, neshamot. You don't, right?
I'm talking physical traits.
There are physical traits, yes, and there also are character traits that certain children are born with, right? Thank God I was blessed with 7, each one amazing children, and each one is very different, and some of them were born with such a kind, generous disposition, right? And some others were born with a more selfish disposition. And Natalie and I gained so much pride that one of those children who's born with a more selfish disposition has worked on himself and has become an incredibly caring, sweet, generous young man. So we have our physical traits, and we also have, right, which are to a great degree is part of the genes that we're getting from our parents, and we have our character traits, which is our neshama, our soul, and the areas of work that we are meant to work on.
But when we talk about genes, we talk about
Physical, yeah.
What about the genes, the character traits that we inherit from our? There are also spiritual genes, or what is?
Yeah, there's a certain spiritual DNA that we're getting from Hashem, from Avram Avinu, coming all the way down to us, from Abraham, right? But then each one of us has where we're starting out and the challenges we have. Yes, Esther.
Rabbi, what is the Jewish perspective on suicide? Does somebody kill themselves immediately? Are they bound for Gehenna?
Okay, so the way that we understand suicide today, right, is that a person who got to that point must have been in such a sorry, devastating state of mind. So certainly suicide is prohibited as it can be. We can't take any life, whether it's someone else's life or our own life, right? How will God judge such a person? I'm sure with love and compassion, and each person based on their situation. If we're talking about someone who's making a goodbye party, and is in good state of body and mind, but wants to end it, that's very different than a person who is struggling with their mental health or struggling with life events that have become so overwhelming that they just don't see a way forward. Right? There are worlds of difference between those two and someone who says, I had enough. Right? I'd like everyone to come. Right, don't come to my funeral. Just come now. We'll have a good time. We'll drink a little bit, and then I'm going to take some medication that was prescribed from Dr. Kevorkian, and it's been a fun ride.
People who committed suicide buried.
Yes, people who commit suicide are the family sits shiva in the same manner, and they're buried in the Jewish cemetery. Yes. No. Cheryl.
Somebody recently told me that they might have a life-threatening disease, and they told me that instead of going through the treatment, because I said, well, it depends on.
Okay, look, there are situations.
They told me that, no, I'm not putting myself through that, and I'm going to die with all my family around me.
Okay.
And I'm going
Okay, look, in those situations, that's not suicide. A person can decide. That Rabbi Twersky, Allah Shalom, tells such a beautiful, moving story that his father was diagnosed with cancer that was terminal cancer, right? But if you would go through all these treatments, it would be harrowing, right? It would be debilitating, and there's maybe like a 1% chance of success. And he and his father discussed it, and his father said, he's not going to do that, and you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. In the end, he decided to do it. So he asked his father, right? And he said, I'm doing it for your mother's sake. Right? I know how for your mother's sake. I know how she feels, and there's any chance whatsoever, right? All steps, you have to go full steam ahead. So that's why I'm doing it. Right. But a person does not need to do that. There are heroic measures, right, that don't need to be taken. A person can say, I don't have the strength for that. Right? That's not suicide. God has sent this illness for this person for whatever reason that they need to endure whatever they're going to endure before they enter the loving embrace of God. And a person can decide, depending on the situation. Obviously, we're talking about something that's life-ending, right?
I don't know if this case she's referring to, but I think she was referring to physician-assisted suicide versus just not taking treatment.
That's different. Physician-assisted suicide is actively taking something to expedite death or to cause death, right? Or we talk, okay, so that is something that halachically is not prescribed, and that would go into the category of suicide, which I said before. It all depends on the person's state of mind. I'm not here to judge anybody, but that would be considered suicide. What's not considered suicide is to decide I'm not going to go through these heroic measures, which probably not going to help anyhow, and going to completely destroy me. I'm going to let the illness take its path. And that a person, depending on the situation, that can be, and that was the case with Rabbi Twersky that I was referring to. We're not talking about taking any pill, physician-assisted suicide with Rabbi Twersky's father. Chas v'shalom. Okay, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. Thank you. Right, we're not talking about physician-assisted suicide. Right, we're talking about letting a disease take its course because there's nothing that we can do for it. And instead of putting myself through all of these harrowing treatments and then having the same result, maybe lasting a week or two longer, right? That's what we're talking about. But painkillers are okay. Painkillers, of course. Painkillers, of course. And when a person is at that end, so we give painkillers as much as necessary. And even if there might be a chance that this morphine that the person is getting might end up accelerating their demise, if they're taking it to relieve the pain and not to expedite their death, that's perfectly fine. 100% fine. So, yes, sir.
So doesn't that kind of fly in the face of the president of the Villagon? Because he was saying that this is my last opportunity to do this. So even though it's horrific and pain racking, those extra.
What was horrific and pain? He wasn't. We don't see he was in pain at all.
I mean, in the case
he was crying that he felt he was leaving this world,
right.
And he was recognizing this is a world of opportunity.
Right, and so even though for someone that extra 2 weeks might be very pain-racking.
A person can choose to do that, but I'm saying, but it would not be suicide if a person doesn't choose to do that. Suicide is when I take a step to, right, whether it is actually chas v'shalom, a person killing themselves, or the physician-assisted suicide, which basically is the person killing himself with an injection or a pill. How is it done? An injection.
There are different ways of doing it.
Yeah.
So my question is, how closely are we required to follow the precedents of the sages like the Vilna?
Okay, so if a person can look again, we don't know he's in pain at all. He was just lamenting that his time had come to leave this world of opportunity. So now we mentioned before the idea that it's not that the next world, Olam Haba, is not mentioned explicitly. We saw many allusions to it last week, but it's not mentioned explicitly right, in the Torah, right? Spoken about by the Nevi'im and in the Gemara and the Talmud, right? So we gave one approach last week. Another approach is as follows. I'm just going to read this. You can be a righteous person your whole life. Do every single commandment. Stop hunger. Bring about world peace. Save the ozone layer. Cure diseases. If you did it all for your reward in the next world, you've lived a selfish life, which is the opposite of being one with God. The Almighty needs nothing. He is infinite, and that every one of his acts is purely altruistic. Heaven is not discussed in the Torah in order to emphasize the necessity to do what's right because it's right, and not for the reward or to avoid punishment. Right? We had them Pirkei Avos. We should be like an Eved Hamishamshin es Harav, like a servant serving the master. Shalo almenat lekabel pras. Not doing it in order to receive reward, but doing it because I want to be godly. I want to do what is right to do. Number 9, and in the end, on talking about heaven and reaping rewards after death, a man said, what if we live a rich, selfless, compassionate, caring life here on earth, and then we die and there's nothing, no reward? The other man said, if that happens, then your reward is that wonderful life that you lived on earth. This one that would come up often when I was teaching in high school, the conversations, right? When I was having with different kids, right? But let's say this is all wrong, Rabbi. So I said, something? Let's say, right, as I'm leaving this world, I have this incredible realization that it's all going to end. And all these things that I believed in, that I've lived my life according to, right? I'm just a very sophisticated biological animal, right? And now I'm going to die, and that's it. So what am I going to regret then, right? Okay, so maybe I didn't have to get up quite so early in the morning every day, right? But I've lived, I think, has been a nice, generous, good life because of the beliefs that I had. I've gotten close with many people. I have, thank God, a wonderful relationship with my wife, with my children. I had it with my parents, right? So I could have had a cheeseburger. I could have saved some money on buying non-kosher food, right? Right? Compare that to the riches that I've gained from these teachings of living a good, selfless, hopefully productive life. Okay. Life is precious. We wish for long life to do mitzvot, grow spiritually, and gain the greatest closeness we can to the Almighty in this world. When the time comes for us to leave this world, there's no need to fear the next step. It's merely a step along the path to the ultimate pleasure of being one with God. There's no one here who hasn't done some things wrong, right? And we will need to confront that, right? Hopefully in this world, that's the teshuvah that we discussed. But if not, then in the time to come. But it's a step along the path to becoming one connected with God. And that is how we view hell. That is how we view Gehenna. There's no eternal damnation. It is a step along the way of purifying oneself and thereby having that connection with God.
What about those who are truly evil?
Yeah, those who are truly evil. So that Ramchal had said earlier, they will not have that existence.
They won't be close to Hashem, but where do those nishmat go to?
Do they exist, not exist? So that's something, it would seem that they don't exist at all.
Those nishmat get vanquished?
It's like they can really disappear, like they never existed.
Like in the Tanakh, when it says, let my enemies be blotted out, is that?
It's like they never existed, literally.
Yeah, so we say the expression Yimach Shemo V'Zichro. May their name and remembrance be obliterated. Yes, Mary.
I keep thinking that their creation of God, like all people, or are they not?
They were. They were. And they took the opportunity that was given to them, and they not only squandered it, but they utilized that to cause pain, havoc, destruction in the world. So they've lost, everyone had that opportunity. Everyone has that opportunity.
We
Like
don't have that
Adolf
answer.
Hitler, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, my friends.
Thank you very much.
So there might be some, the obliteration of the soul might be what is the concept of hell beyond Gehenna.
Oh,
No?
Paul's
The
on now.
answer?
I couldn't see when he came on, Paul. Sorry. When I'm showing the on screen there, so I can't see everybody over here. Okay, good. Okay, please God, next week I should be good on Thursday. Well, if there's any change, I'll let you know. But I should be good on Thursday.
What's the subject?
Stage 3 of the afterlife, or part 3, reincarnation.
Ooh.
We have all been here before. Okay, guys.
So